That should be one of the checks and balances against an out-of-control government, is a sheriff who actually understands the document he swore to uphold.
Free Talk Live.
I wanted to focus a little bit more on the hypocrisy of these conservatives, because you just brought up an interest, or actually it wasn't you, but it was David in New Mexico, brought up the story about these sheriffs who are refusing to enforce certain gun laws that were passed in New Mexico recently.
Yes.
And you gave another example of some other sheriffs elsewhere.
Also happened in Washington State.
Yeah, that did something similar. Some what they consider to be unconstitutional gun laws were passed, and the sheriffs are saying, nope, we're not going to enforce that. And I think that's great. I just want to be clear. I support them in making that decision. I also supported the sheriffs who made the decision to institute the sanctuary counties or sanctuaries,
supported sanctuary cities
for immigrants.
Just made it so. And what this idea is, this crazy lunatic idea that we're coming up with, first of all, we didn't come up with it. The first major effort in the United States was done by James Madison. You may have heard of him, Thomas Jefferson. So way back in the day, there were a couple laws that got passed by President Adams, and they were called the Aliens and Sedition Acts. And what these did was say that you cannot do business with anyone French because they are bad guys. We don't like them. We're at war with them. So if you open your house to a Frenchman, then you can go to jail. And the Sedition Act was acting seditiously against the government, and basically what that law said was, if you dare, Ian, say something bad about our president, you can go to jail.
They have that in Thailand right now, I think.
Yes, they do.
I think it might be the death penalty.
Yeah.
At the very least, prison.
It was interesting that Adams said it's okay to say bad things about the vice president, Thomas Jefferson, but you can't say bad things about me. And that got taken to court because someone accused John Adams of being rotund. He was kind of hefty guy. So what did people do? Jefferson and Madison took this to a couple states that were interested in coming up with saying something stronger, and they wrote basically the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions that promoted this idea of nullification. And Jefferson argued that we had a moral obligation not to follow, not to enforce laws that are immoral.
Good people disobey bad laws.
Yes, and
I think that's
what
truth.
They were saying.
Yeah.
That's what
But there are so many people who are enamored with the idea of this rule of law.
Yes.
Many of the very same conservatives who would be supporting these sheriffs for going against these bad gun laws are likely the same people who also were against the sheriffs who were nullifying the federal government.
Absolutely.
In the case of these immigration laws. So you can't have it both ways.
Right.
Okay?
If you believe in liberty, if you truly believe in the idea of liberty,
which they probably don't. But, if you believe in liberty, you certainly shouldn't have it both ways.
Right.
But even if you want your own freedom, you don't have to believe in the liberty of others. You'll get there, hopefully, someday. But for now, if you want your own freedom, you still have to be consistent in your application of this concept.
Right.
If the concept is that sheriff ought to be able to disobey those laws,
right.
Well, the sheriff ought to be able to disobey any laws that they think are unconstitutional. That should be one of the checks and balances against an out-of-control government, is a sheriff who actually understands the document he swore to uphold.
And Jefferson and Madison certainly understood that. When they said, you're going to face bad laws, laws that are just immoral, and here's what you do. They laid it out for us crystal clear. They put them into writing. They encourage state legislatures to push these things in Washington. We're not going to do it. You can tell us whatever you want. You can pass any kind of crazy law, but guess what? We're not going to follow it. So there you go.
Right. What are you going to do about it?
If you have no enforcement, Sorry.
Right. What are you going to do about it if they don't follow it? Are you going to go around and round the sheriffs up and throw them in jail? Well, then what?
Right.
Because presumably other people also don't want to enforce those laws. That's why the sheriffs feel comfortable doing that, right? Because if the sheriffs didn't think that this would be a politically popular move, they probably wouldn't do it in their area. So to some extent, the input of the community does weigh into some play on what these people are doing. They feel like it's a politically safe move. They feel like they can get re-election when they do this. And so I mean, I find politics to be despicable, no doubt about it. And one of the things that I think to be the most despicable is hypocrisy. And these people at all levels in government have it. Right. So I want to hear from the conservatives who actually will be consistent and support the sheriffs who are also refusing to enforce the immigration laws. And I bet it's very hard to find one of those people.
Yeah, and I hope that there's at least that test case, that sheriff who is supporting sanctuary gun areas where we're not going to enforce your laws and sanctuary for immigration.
Yeah,
we're not going to enforce those. Yeah, I'd like to come across that.
Whoever that sheriff is, he'd be worth talking to.
Please call in at 855-450-FREE if you are that sheriff.
But even then, there's still not the ideal. There's no sheriff out there that actually is consistent with applying this concept. Right. The gun thing has crossed a line for some of these guys, and that's good. I'm not, I'm not trying to badmouth them for doing this one thing right. Okay, that's good. You're doing the right thing in that particular case. But if at the same time you're also going around arresting people for having a plant, or arresting people for having a chemical in their pocket, or arresting a teenager for having a bottle of alcohol or something like that, one of these nonviolent, victimless crimes, you are also in the wrong. And I'd love to see a sheriff be like, nope. Just to look at every single law that the government passes or is demanding that he enforce and say, let's see, murder, check. Let's see, rape, check. Arson, check. Yep, we're going to investigate those. Yep. Property destruction, check. What else? Let's see, we're going to investigate theft. We're going to investigate breakings and enterings. Just kind of go, wait, drug laws? No, we're not going to spend our time on that.
Don't need to waste our time.
Peaceful immigrants? Nope, we're not going to spend our time on that. Enforcing gun laws? Nope, not going to spend our time on that. That's what I want to see happen. That's what I want to see. If we're going to have a one-size-fits-all government, if we're going to have a state, which I don't want to see, but if we're going to have it, God, it sure would be nice to have somebody with some consistent principles in one of these roles.
Right.
Because they could make a big difference.
Yeah, and how much less expensive would it be to operate a government? How much less intrusive would it be?
Yeah, a lot less.
And in the meantime, the things that really do matter, as far as law enforcement goes, that to me is protecting people's lives and protecting property rights. If they are doing that, they are doing everything I expect them to do. What I don't expect them to do is bust a teenager with a roach in his ashtray. That's kind of silly.
Free Talk Live. Listen live 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern or grab the podcast. It's all at freetalklive.com.